Hello everyone. I would like to share with you today a demo on the difference between traditional hooping, which would be hooping with a grid and a hoop, as opposed to hoop floating your fabric. In my directions, I always have you use a grid, mark the grid with, let me hold it up here, with an arrow-shaped post-it note. That's usually how I do it. But the last couple years I have been floating my fabric, and I find that that's actually easier to do and definitely easier on some hoopings than on others. So I'd like you to be able to be familiar with both, and then you can choose what works best for you. But it's good to have that information on both of them because they both are important in different times. So first, I just want to just remind everybody, on my designs I always have you put your USB stick into your machine and go to first stitch. We mark the first stitch. On this design right here, you can see the first stitch is going to be marked right here. If I hold it this way, it's facing me. So it would be about an inch and a half above and maybe an inch to the right. That's where this first stitch mark is. Rarely are my first stitches ever in the middle. So if you are at the center of your hoop, and I say this mostly for Baby Lock, Brother, and Janome machines. You have a built-in center stitch. So when you open the design, your needle goes right to the middle. That's not the first stitch of my design. That's a built-in center stitch in your machine. What I need you to do is pass that. So on a Baby Lock and a Brother, your screen is on the side, on the bottom lower right end. You will have kind of at the bottom down there a plus minus sign. That's your advanced screen. It allows you to advance through the design, either forward or backward. And like so, if you break your needle or ran out of bobbin thread, you can back up. Well, that's the same icon you can use to go forward. And in my designs, I use it to go forward to see if I can sew over something that has already been embroidered or a specific line that has been drawn on the fabric. And that way, you are finding that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Not almost, but exactly where you're supposed to be. So that's what I have you do, is I have you sew the color number 1, usually without thread. So that is how that process works. But again, on a Baby Lock and a Brother, you have to go to your plus minus that's down here kind of at the bottom on the right, and then you're going to go to plus 1, and that's how you get to first stitch. On a Janome, you just have a plus and a minus, and you go to plus 1, and it advances you through your built-in center stitch to the first stitch of the design. So that's very important to know. On a Bernina, Viking, and a Foth, you don't have a built-in center stitch. So when you open up that design and go to embroidery, boom, you're at first stitch. So there isn't an extra step that you have to do to get there. So having said that, let's just talk about how that would look on your hoops. So normally I would take this piece of fabric and I would hoop it, and I'm actually going to take this out right here to show you what that would look like.
Okay, what are we working on right now?
What this is this block is from Snow Country Express, and it is the Gathering Presents block. And you know what? I'm demoing on this block, but it doesn't have anything. Every single block is done the same way. It's the technique I want you to learn, not specifically how to do this one block. It's all of the blocks go like this. We start with the first stitch. My first stitch, as you can see right here, is marked here. On this specific block, it's supposed to line up right here at the edge of this thin mountain line. So when I put this on, and let me make sure you can see that, I think you can, I am very, very close to the edge. I'm very close to having no fabric over here. But I actually do have it, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. And I'm going to just move this way to show you. I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to slide it over here into this right here. Let me get it kind of straight-ish right here, and pop my hoop down in, and I'm going to tighten this up a minute. So I'm going to straighten this fabric out inside my hoop, and what I'm mostly concerned about is I want this to be at the end of this little line, but I also want the fabric to be straight. And I have this line that I drew right here, and I'm trying to get that straight. There it is, kind of in there. Let's pop that down. I think I'm going to just skosh this up just a little tiny bit right there. There we go. Now my line is straight going across. The line that I drew is parallel to the line that's on the grid. So I'm just going to lock this in. And this is how I might hoop this one. So that the line that is drawn on the fabric is parallel with a line that is on the grid. That's how I know I'm straight. This mark is about a 1/2 inch below. Because of the design that it is, I have plenty of room to move my design up and down. I'm close enough. I'm just going to, when I take this off, my needle will probably be right here. When I go to the machine, I'm just going to move my needle up there. And because I'm straight, I'll be ready to go. I have caught my fabric in here. I can see it right here on the edge. There's not a lot of it, but I did catch it in. You can probably see better on the back side. It's completely caught inside. Then I would attach my hoop to the module, float 2 layers of stabilizer underneath the hoop, and then line it up when I get over to the module. That's how I'm going to line up this one with traditional hooping. So traditional hooping, I marked the grid. I marked the grid with an arrow-shaped post-it note so I would know where first stitch is. And I hooped it doing this way. So that's one way of hooping. And it works great when you have plenty of fabric, it works great, but sometimes this is what happens. There's so much embroidery right here that it's really hard to hoop over the stuff that's already been embroidered. It's kind of a nightmare actually. And sometimes like on Snow Country, which is the one I'm doing right now, the middle block, you have done a ton of embroidery on this side and a ton on this, and you have a little space you're going to put a horse in. Well, you have to actually hoop over 2 thick areas of embroidery. So it's actually easier if you do the second method than if you do this method, because there's so much embroidery you have to hoop over. But if you haven't got much embroidery on here, this is a great option to do, and it's easy. It's easy for me to do it with a grid. But a lot of people, it's not easy to hoop the fabric and get it in there. That isn't as easy. If you have arthritis in your knuckles, if you have any kind of soreness in your wrists, sometimes putting a hoop in is not the easiest thing. So here's your option, sister or brother, on doing it on this one. It is going to be doing it this method. So this was using a grid. Now I'm going to set the grid aside for a second. And now I'm going to show you floating the fabric. Floating the fabric, I'm just going to take a piece of stabilizer, hoop it. It's slightly tacked down, it's slightly sprayed already before I put the hoop in with the little 505. You could also use, if you didn't like the spray, 505 also has a glue stick. You could have done a little glue stick here too. So a couple different things that you can do, because you want it a tiny bit tacky to help hold this fabric when we put it on. So here's how we're going to do it. First stitch, so when you attach the hoop to your module, you're going to already be at first stitch because you've already brought in the design. Your needle is already at first stitch. And we already know that on this one, the needle's going to be right about here. That's where the needle's going to be when we go back over to the machine. I already know that first stitch lines up with this little line because it tells me that in the instructions. So you're going to put that little line under your needle because your needle is already at first stitch. So you're going to slide this right under your needle. And what you're going to find then is there's a placement line. And the placement line, you're going to walk up like this. So there's a couple ways of doing it. Go to color number 1. And I wish I had done this. I hadn't. But you can actually embroider number 1 right here on there. Okay, now that's the first method. Now we're going to go and learn the second method over at the machine so that you can see the difference. And quite frankly, it's a little bit faster, a little bit easier, and a little less stressful. Okay, let's go try it. Okay, we are over here. I just want to show you we're doing number 3 of gathering presents. We're going to make this is what the design will look like. I'm going to make sure I'm at first stitch, which I already was, but just kind of showing you again. Now, this is the second method. This is a great optional method of hooping. We're going to float this one.
You're going to sew the...
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to sew number 1 first. I'm actually sewing color number 1 on a piece of stabilizer all by itself. Nothing else on it. Just a little piece of stabilizer, no fabric. It is lightly sprayed with the little 505. And now, after I sew color 1, I've already gone to color 2, but I need to start again. So I'm going to go back to color 1 because I need my needle to be lined up exactly where the first stitch is. So then I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to float it in here, just like this. And I'm going to float it exactly like the directions say. You know, I should have had clippies here, I guess, but I'm gonna just hope that's not gonna be in your way. I'm gonna hope for that. I'm gonna lay it in here. The first stitch, according to the directions,
Let me get some clips.
goes right under, goes right there. So the first stitch goes at the end of this little placement line that's actually going to be a line for the mountain as soon as it's actually sewn. But I'm going to, so I'm going to put my needle there and sink it. When you sink your needle down in, here's what happens. You're pivoting your fabric off of that needle, which is so great because you're able to do that. I'm going to go ahead and do a clip right there to help hold that in place so it's not, I don't want that to be in the way of the camera. Now that I've sewn it underneath, leave your needle in, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this up just a little bit, and I'm going to look over here to see where my placement line has been stitched. And I have to stick my head over there, so sorry, that's not going to work too great.
Well, actually, I can move this over here. And
Okay,
get out
move
of
that
the
over
way.
there, because what I'm trying to line up with is if I fold this back, I'm trying to line up, let me use this little pointer, the stitching that's on this matching the stitching that's on the stabilizer. Those two are going to line up, and actually that looks like it's lined up pretty well. So I'm going to just hold it down like that and flatten this out. Now, this could shift on you if you didn't put enough glue or if you didn't hold it well enough. So it can shift on you. Just keep that in mind, and I'll show you how we're going to fix it. So now that I have it where I think it's lined up, I'm going to lift up my needle and I'm going to add a basting box. Now, actually, before I do it, I'm going to hold my thread and I'm going to take a complete turn on my needle to get the bobbin thread up. So now I have the top thread and the bobbin thread up. Because if you don't have those up, sometimes in fact, this happens on all machines. Sometimes it doesn't do a 6mm stitch. It skips. It can't get a good grip of the bobbin thread. Now, when I add my basting box, it's going to go over to this lower left corner. So leaving my hand here is very dangerous. I'm going to use my right hand and hold the fabric so it doesn't move. I'm going to use my left hand and touch the basting box because it goes way over here to this corner. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew out my basting box. It worked great because I brought up my bobbin thread. Now my job is just to keep it smooth. Keep it smooth and flat until I get it all basted down. We're going to go right through that little guy. Oh, we're just going to miss his eyeball. Good job. We're going to go right through the previous embroidery. And we just basted it down. And that's what's important, is to get it basted down. Now I'm going to open that up. Now, I want to now line up my first stitch. And I can see right here, it looks like I am still lined up. However, I really do want to take off my basting box before I line it up. And here's why. This says I have 13 colors in my design. I only have 12. The 13th has been added using the basting box, but because it came first, it is now making all the rest of my threads off by one. So please, before you do anything else, turn off the basting box. If you have a Bernina, turn it off twice because you actually have two. One goes around the design and one goes around the inside of the hoop. Now I can line this up and let's see how bad it slipped. The first stitch looks perfect. Let's go to broken thread and let's walk the line. Broken thread is the icon that you're going to use when you break a needle or you need to back up because you ran out of bobbin or something like that. On a baby lock and a brother and a Janome, you have a plus minus. You're going to go to +1 to walk, or +10 to walk through the machine. On a Viking and a Pfaff, you have a plus sign, a plus and a minus sign to walk through, walk forward in your design, walk backwards, and you just hold that baby down until you walk as far as you want. On a Bernina, it's the broken thread icon. You use your top knob and you just turn it to the right and get it, let me get that right there, and just walk through the design. You can see we're just walking through the design here. And now I'm going to drop this down. That's how much mine shifted by, or it's how much I missed it by. I don't know if it shifted or if I just didn't line it up right. I'm very close, but I'm not close enough. So we are going to have to rotate this design to be perfect. So now I'm going to go back over to, I have to go back. I'm still on color 1, but I'm not at the beginning of 1. I need to start at the beginning of 1. So it's easiest to me to go to color 2 and then go back to 1. That's the easiest to me to get to on any machine. Just go to color 2 and then go back to color 1. Now I'm going to go to rotate this design a little bit. I need to rotate it to the right so it comes down. I'm going to go to my editing pencil and I'm going to go to pinpoint placement on a Bernina because I'm able to rotate this way with precision. So the key on this is you're going to, before you select anything, make sure nothing's selected and zoom in 4 or 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let me just, is that where it is? Yeah, I guess it is. Look at that, did it right. Sorry, I thought it was lighting up someplace else. I'm gonna zoom in all the way. You're gonna have to kind of really look, but when you zoom in, you left your needle at first stitch. Wherever you left your needle, that's where it's gonna show this little circle with the crosshair. We left the needle at first stitch. That's why I wanna look for that little bad boy. I'm going to select the free point butterfly, not the grid, not anything down here. This is reset, not that. We're going to touch the free point butterfly with 2 X's on it because we're doing 2 points on here. And we're going to touch, when I touch it, that emblem goes away. I'm going to touch right where it was. My needle is already there because I already lined it up when I was at color number 1. And now I'm going to hit set. When I hit set, the yellow marker the marker turns yellow and it locks it in. Now we're going to pivot off of this point. So now I'm going to kind of back out here just a minute to show you. My first stitch is right here and we're kind of walking up the side of these mountains following this line. So I'm just going to touch over here someplace. And you can see I get a new marker in. So I'm going to go up here. So I'm going to go to the edge of this placement line. And I'm just going to see where that is on my fabric. And you can see here, if you zoom in, I am much too high. I'm too high. I need to actually be on this bottom line, the bottom line down here. And I am not there. I need to be right here at the end of that big fat line. And I'm not there. So I need to go straight down. So I'm going to use my straight stitch knob, get my needle up, and I'm going to use my straight stitch knob and turn it down carefully. I turn and I wait for the computer to catch up with me. Nope, not enough. I go a little bit more. Let's try that. Oop, almost. One more. And I'm going to go, oh, that's it. That looks pretty darn good right there. And I could do maybe, now I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to back out. I'm going to back out so you can see more. If I want to like test all the little spots on the line, I don't really touch the line. I touch underneath it. It goes, the marker moves to the closest piece of embroidery. And let's test that out. And you can see that is absolutely dead on. So I am positioned perfect. I'm going to zoom out. Now my nodes are my first node, this yellow one, marker, is perfectly positioned. This second one could be, I could have that marker anywhere on this line. I could have this marker. It doesn't matter where it is. It could be over here even with the first one. Where I put it, it doesn't matter. What matters is, did you move it to be correct? Once it's correct, you just hit set. I'm getting ready to hit it. When I do, these 2 markers should disappear. And they do. And that's how I know that I have set that correctly, because my markers disappear, allowing me to now restart over and set, or to leave it like it is. I like it like it is. I'm going to get out of this screen, touching the big eye to drop the tools. Needle in the lower right corner takes me back to embroidery. I've sewn color 1 and lined it up in pinpoint, so I'm now going to advance to color 2, put on my thread, and go ahead and embroider out this design trees.
And put 1 layer of stabilizer.
Thank you very much. I am going to float 1 more layer of stabilizer under here before I start. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, let's do it.
All right.